Hey, yo, Sox fans, NWI Steve back here once again with another special edition of the Sox On Tap podcast. We're joined once again today by Dr. David Fletcher, who is going to join us here and talk with us and give us a follow-up discussion to our conversation from a few weeks ago. Now that Dick Allen, former White Sox legend and a guy that was instrumental in helping to keep this franchise on the south side of Chicago, is rightfully going to be enshrined at the National Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, New York, this coming July. Dr. Fletcher, thanks for coming back on with us. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great, Steve. Thanks for having me come back.
All right. Well, hey, Dr. Fletcher, we obviously gave our listeners a sense as far as what you were trying to do and a lot of people in the Dick Allen camp leading up to the Hall of Fame vote 2 weeks ago here, and kind of set the scene for us because you were actually down there in Dallas at the winter meetings. You were with Dick's family and everybody else kind of involved in his candidacy and working to get him enshrined in the Hall of Fame. So kind of walk us through what the mood was when you landed in Dallas at the winter meetings 2 Fridays ago.
Well, I got there early Friday morning before the vote on Sunday. It was kind of an overcast day and it was kind of drizzly, and it was just, I didn't know what to expect. I had a lot of, I thought, positive feelings about going into the vote on December 8th. But again, we had to be boots on the ground when we got to Dallas. One thing was different this time around with the classic baseball era vote was the fact that they did not announce the voting committee until the Sunday before. In years past, they had announced the committee several weeks beforehand, and consequently, the committee members would get inundated with material from various campaigns trying to get their player or manager inducted in the Hall of Fame through the Veterans Committee. So this year was different. So we really didn't know who was going to be on the ballot. And so I had to scramble the week before, do an analysis of the voters and what had transpired in the past. 3 of the voters had been on the panel before. And so Joe Torre, Ozzie Smith, and Steve Hurd, who's a baseball statistician, had been on the committee before. So we thought that was positive, but we were disappointed that we had heard that Jim Cott was going to be on the committee, but he did not get named to the committee, nor did Goose Gossage, nor was there any Phillies on the committee. So there were no actual teammates other than Joe Torre for his 1 year in 1970 on the ballot. So just had to go through an analysis of the voters, what connections, relationships we had, who knew them, and so forth. And so it's just like a political campaign, boots on the ground, trying to lobby. One thing that was advantageous this year as opposed to past years was the success of Chili Dog. Having Chili Dog come out in 2001, 2022, after Dick lost by 1 vote last time, having that been out there for a while, the message was clear that Dick Allen saved a charter American League baseball team, and how we chronicled it in the book that John Owens and I did.
Yeah, no, that's great insight to it right there. You talk about some of the lobbying that was going on with, the various voting committee members there and not knowing that as far in advance as you had in years past. Did you have a sense as far as, what the overall mood was, or kind of any inklings as far as what direction you kind of thought the vote was going to go based on who was ultimately casting the votes this time?
I did. I mean, again, based on past votes and the past members, the Steve Hurt from MLB, the statistician guy, had gone on and done a video interview a few months ago and talking about the classic baseball era and just how the veterans committees worked. And he made a comment about, Dick Allen missing by 1 vote twice. And I thought that was kind of, to me, somewhat of a predictor, certainly because of his background in stats, knowing the significance of Dick being the best offensive player not in the Hall of Fame with his 165 plus OPS plus, that would be helpful. So I had a belief there would be a core number of voters behind him. Also, I knew a couple of voters who are the baseball historians, and I reached out to them beforehand. So I felt that I was going to be able to secure at least 11 votes. There was a couple I had to try to shore up and did some behind the scenes stuff, some stuff I'm not at liberty to discuss. But by Saturday, I was confident I had 13 votes, and we only needed 12. And I was right on the money. Dick got 13 votes. So I have my inklings who didn't vote for him out of the 16 panels, but I'm not going to share those thoughts at this time because there's a author who's actually going to write a book about the Dick Allen Hall of Fame campaigns over the last 20 years. And I don't want to steal some of his thunder in his book project, but I felt the mood was different. I felt that this was the time Dick was going to get in. Some of the people who he had blocked him before had gotten in, like Vinny Minoso, Tony Oliva. So I really felt the decks were clear, even though there was strong competition with other people on the ballot, including Dave Parker, who I thought was a good candidate, Tommy John, who was actively campaigning to be elected to the Hall of Fame, and had a lot of Hall of Famers campaigning for him, including Jim Cott. I thought he had a chance, and I also thought that John Donaldson, who had a connection to the White Sox with the Negro Leagues and a scout who actually brought the White Sox Ernie Banks, but the White Sox turned him down. He went to the Cubs. So
Hank Aaron and Willie Mays.
Yeah, I'm aware of those other ones that they passed on. So just think how different the franchise would be. So yeah, I felt good. I mean, it was again different this time. We were in the MLB winter meeting at the Hilton Hantolo Hotel. It was a very festive atmosphere. It was just a fun place to be at with all the Christmas stuff. Plus, we also had secured a watch party location right above the lobby. And that really, really helped the proximity to the actual meeting in the conjugation area. And so it was going to be an easy place for people to come in during the announcement and hopefully a positive announcement for Dick to have a post-announcement press conference for the family. And that's what it turned out to be. We had a rehearsal dinner the night before, all of us, the family members, and Andy Billman, who's working on a documentary with me, my co-author, John Owens, Ken Schmoller, who wrote the book Last Comiskey, and the Allen family, Richard Allen Jr., his son, who's 59 years old, had his son, Richard Allen III, which they called Trey. And then Rick Allen was there, who's the cousin of Richard Allen Jr., who's the son of Hank Allen, who was number 42 in the White Sox in 1972 and 1973. So they were the family members there. And so we just had a very positive rehearsal dinner the night before. We went in the room, felt some good vibes. That's when I made the prediction that Saturday night he was going to get in with 13 votes. And so the next day was just, basically relaxing, waiting for the watch party to go on. People from the Phillies and the White Sox drifted in and out. We were very much blessed for all the White Sox fans who may have seen the fabulous crescendo of Chicago media behind Dick's campaign. Unlike prior years, we never had this much more support from Chicago as we did this year, and so it was like the coverage was like a crescendo. We had great story. WGN TV did a 6.5 minute video. In fact, had Nancy Faust playing Jesus Christ Superstar, the walk up music that she invented in '72. we had great stories, with Chuck Garfien, some pre-coverage. Chicago Tribune, Sun Times, all did some pre-coverage stuff. Obviously, the great stuff that you folks did, helping get the message out there. So we really felt that the mood was there, that the city of Chicago was behind. And so probably the best thing I can tell your audience is that the watch party, which was in the Card Room A, the door was Dick with his MVP plaque from 1973 after he got in 72 was the kind of the cover thing for the door. So it was a very Chicago-centric event. Obviously, the Phillies had some representatives there and media, but this was basically a Chicago event. And I really enjoyed that as a Chicago White Sox fan. And we were very blessed that my publicist, Sharon Panazzo, who was the Cubs media director for 25 years, and then she was at NBC Entertainment and repped Jimmy Fallon and repped Lorne Michaels at Saturday Night Live, and a guy who used to run this show called The Apprentice, and when she was at NBC Entertainment. So she did a fabulous job. It was just a very staged, excellent military style execution, how we did the watch party and how we had it set up. And it was just a fabulous environment. And with a lot of trepidation coming up to the vote, 6:30 Central Time. Again, I felt good. I'd been there in 2014 and 2021 when Dick lost by 1 vote. I had sat next to his son at locked arms in 2014, 2021, only to be devastated. But this year, when the announcer came on and the first thing they said, player from 1964, as soon as I heard that, I knew he was in. And so, for me, your favorite baseball player of all time, to be there at an announcement for him to be in the Hall of Fame and be part of that is extraordinary. It can't be duplicated in my lifetime. And so that was really, really special. And I was there for the family. It was sad that Dick's wife, Willa, could not be there. We contacted her afterwards. The Hall of Fame had contacted her about Dick's induction. And so it was basically with the family. We're just celebrating. And it was a swarm of media after that to interview Richard. And he handled like a pro. It was about 25, 30 minutes. There were probably about 25, 30 reporters, camera crews in the room. And it was just really cool. And I had a list of people I wanted to contact after the positive news. And the first person I called was Goose Gossage. And, Goose let off a few typical Goose F-bombs, which were entertaining. Chuck Garfien actually had a tweet about listening to me talk to Goose on the phone. But that was important because Dick had gone and surprised Goose in 2008 when he got inducted in the Hall of Fame. And I was there and I saw Goose get inducted, and I asked him a lot of questions in his press conference about Dick Allen. So it was sort of a role reversal with the mentor, the mentee. And so talked to Goose, left a message with Wilbur Wood. I didn't get a chance to talk to him. Contacted, obviously, Nancy Faust. Contacted Carlos May. Those are some people I reached out to. Sadly, we could not contact Bill Milton. And that was actually, talk about the mood. That was probably the biggest thing that I would say. I knew when I heard about the news with Bill on Friday, right before the vote, I thought it was prophetic. I had tried to reach out to him a couple weeks before, and he didn't contact me back. And that was kind of strange. And I heard a little bit more about, how he sort of quickly succumbed to some health issues. But I really felt that was just made in heaven, that the fact he died right before Dick's induction to the Hall of Fame. And so that was, the mood. It was just very joyous. And again, what I liked the most from me as a White Sox fan and a Chicago centric person, having went to med school at Rush, was just the joy that came out from Chicago White Sox fans and the people that contacted me, people who helped John and I on our book, and made it very special. And that was the joy I got out of it, was just hearing that type of reaction we got from people, and just afterwards, just the positive stories we got out. I never thought in a million years that my book would be in Crane's Business Journal. Dan McGrath had a great story about, the headline was Dick Allen finally gets his due at the Hall of Fame. And then there was an editorial about Dick, saving the team, and we needed another Dick Allen for the White Sox in 2025. That was in the editorial pages of the Tribune. So just having that outside the sports pages interest in the story just really made it worth it. And, I also was still a full-time practicing doctor. So in the middle of me being in Dallas, I'm dealing with patient issues. In fact, during the watch party, I had to do 2 prescriptions electronically for some patients. So I was able to put that on hold briefly, but just was a unbelievable time and a lot of joy. And now we got to get ready for the induction ceremony in July.
So there's a number of different things to unpack there and just tremendous insight from it. There's 2 things in particular that I'd like to kind of drill down on a little bit there. You talked about the family and the presence of them at the event, the watch party and everything. You kind of talked about you having a kind of quiet confidence, I guess I would probably describe it, leading up to the vote. When we talked previously, you'd mentioned just kind of the sadness and the feelings of being let down by the family previously, of missing by the 1 vote in 2014 and 2021. Where were they at mentally leading up to that vote on Sunday, or up to the announcement on Sunday night?
Well, I will say Richard Jr. was very anxious. He didn't have the confidence I did in that, because he had been let down. I mean, it's personal. It's his dad, and his dad's not been with us for 4 years now, and he didn't get a chance to be here to get the recognition that he deserved a long time ago. So I think for Richard Jr., it was just a lot of anxiety. I know Willa and I had conversations beforehand. His wife, the widow, and she felt good about things this year, and I told her that I felt I had it done this year. Things were different, and I think again the positive effect of the Chili Dog book being out there is something very tangible, explaining that Dick was not a bad teammate. He wasn't a cancer in the clubhouse, and that he had done something extraordinary, special to save a franchise charter team in the American League from leaving Chicago. So. Trying to get the anxiety of his son was something I worked on. And I just tried to prepare him to enjoy the news when it came, just to ride that wave. And for the next 3 or 4 days, he was doing nonstop interviews, and Sharon Panazzo, our publicist, did a great job of connecting him with various different stuff. Richard and I did a few shows together, and it just was, for him, it's not the same as having his dad around to share it with, but at least he could honor his father and express how much the pride the family felt. Again, I've said many times publicly how complicated of a human being that Dick Allen was, but he really meant something to Chicagoans of a certain age that witnessed when he was Michael Jordan before Michael Jordan, and that joy of him getting in, and all the people who told me they're coming to Cooperstown. So that was really, really something special.
So along those lines, then, is there anything that you can share with us? Obviously we kind of saw the social media clips of everybody kind of erupting once they knew that the announcement was coming. Like you said, when they said, or when they announced played from 1964, and everybody just kind of shot up out of their chairs there, and you guys knew. Is there anything that you can tell us about Richard's initial reaction, or anything that he said to you immediately following that moment?
Just thanking me for assisting him and the family of making it happen, making the watch party something very special. I think that was something he acknowledged, and was a very professional, well-run operation. It was very, very, I think, positive for baseball history. Obviously, it was a very positive thing for the White Sox. He was glad with the press release that the White Sox put out about his father. That meant a lot to him, and that finally he was going to get his due, and that he was an extraordinary, transformative player. And so that was a thing that I heard the most from Richard. Was he had dreamed of this moment for a long time, and he had worked hard with Frog, who run his campaign in Philadelphia. They had done a lot of work to keep his dad's name out there. And so I think it was just a sigh of relief. Some sadness he wasn't here to enjoy it, but still, nonetheless, sort of like the Ron Santo family, he is going to get the recognition in the Hall of Fame that he deserves.
Well, that's great to hear, and great to see finally happen. Another point I'd like to have you expand on a little bit, and you touched on this being a very Chicago-centric event, and a lot of the discussion around Dick and his candidacy being around his time in Chicago with the White Sox, and just how important that has been historically to the franchise here. He obviously spent the vast majority of his career in Philadelphia playing for the Phillies, and you and I have kind of talked back and forth about, what's going to happen now. What hat is he going to have on his plaque? But can you talk a little bit about just, you'd shared the lack of presence from the Philadelphia media. Is that something that, bothered the family, that there wasn't a support system in place from, the organization that he spent most of his career with? And I think there are still people that do kind of relate him with being a Philly just because he spent a higher percentage of his career with the Phillies than the White Sox. What was kind of the family's perspective on just their lack of willingness to kind of get behind him, and the lack of presence that they had overall?
Well, I mean, I think I need to correct what you said. I mean, the Phillies have been very supportive of Dick getting in the Hall of Fame, especially in 2021. They made a big push for it, especially their chairman, John Middleton, had done a really huge attempt, but got let down like the family did in 2021. They were not part of the watch party or planning for it, but they did send representatives, and they did send media there. So Philadelphia Inquirer, the beat writers did attend, but it certainly was again Chicago-centric, because all the photos of Dick were as a White Sox. His grandson, however, was wearing a Phillies hat during the announcement. So, I think, the Phillies have been supportive in the fact they retired Dick's number in 2020. If some of your listeners, viewers may remember, I went to that ceremony. I was very honored that Dick asked me. But it may be somewhat of a form of penance, for the Phillies, because of what he endured in Philadelphia, sending him to Little Rock with no preparation, what to expect as an African American, to endure all the slings and arrows he incurred in Philadelphia, having to wear a batting helmet. And some of your viewers may see in the back that helmet is actually one of Dick's helmets from this time of the White Sox, which I want to give to the Hall of Fame. So they certainly have been supportive. I know they want to see Dick going as a Philly, and that's still to be decided. I know what Dick's feelings were, and that he wanted to go in as a White Sox, and his funeral program had him as a White Sox on the cover. His death announcement had him as a White Sox on the cover. That's a family decision, ultimately. I have to respect what the family wants to do. They have a lot of things they have to come up with as they interact with the Hall of Fame. It's going to be a crazy time there at the Hall of Fame, as it's expected. Ichiro Suzuki will be inducted at the same time, so half of Japan will be in Cooperstown. But a good number of people from Chicago and Philadelphia will be as well. So and Pittsburgh because of Dave Parker. So again, I will tell your viewers, if they would have been there, they would have seen this was a Chicago White Sox event.
Well, that's what we are on these airways. We are Chicago White Sox centric, so that is always kind of great to hear. Obviously, and see that happening on a little bit of a more national stage, when right now this organization could use all the positive news that it can get given where things are. And as you talked about and highlighted earlier on, it really would be helpful for this organization to have a transformative player come along, very similar to what happened with Dick 50 plus years ago. So that would be very beneficial here. And so there's a lot of synergies there, I would say.
There are. I think one of the biggest ones was, again, in 1970, the White Sox lost 106 games. And 2 years later, they almost won the American League West. They would have won the West if Bill Milton hadn't hurt his back. But they had a 40-game swing in their win-loss record in 2 years. It can be done. And it's kind of giving hope to the fans. And so I think the symbolism is even more significant this year because of the disastrous 2024 season. And I think that was the feature of the editorial of the Chicago Tribune about, Dick Allen's not going to be around to save the franchise, but like he did in 72, but again, trying to get a magnetic player who's very fan oriented is what the White Sox need, and to get people there. And so it's sort of it sets the scene, I think, for better times for the White Sox. And again, as a fan of the team, I'm hoping this is the start of a resurrection, and the new stadium talks continue, because I would just love to see the 2033 All-Star game in Chicago at the new stadium, honoring what the White Sox created in 1933.
That's a sentiment that I share, and I know a lot of people within this fan base share along with you. So we're on the same page from that front. So we've got a little bit of time now. We've got about 7 months up until the induction in Cooperstown in late July. So kind of what's next for you and for the family as you prepare for induction Sunday in late July?
Well, I don't have control over that. I'd like to be part of it. We've offered our assistance to Willa, who is the person who has to make decisions. I'm hoping to see Richard, the son, do the speech, because he looks like his dad, and he was there with his dad. He can really tell a lot of the history, especially when he was a kid, when people would throw rocks at his window, trashed his window in Philadelphia, and then he got to see his father's rebirth in Chicago. And how much he enjoyed coming to Comiskey Park. And how much hearing Jesus Christ Superstar meant to him when those big pipe organs came on with Nancy. So those are decisions that have to be made by the family. And what's the speech and all things like this. My team of Sharon Panazzo, and then the media veteran Tom Scheer, we've offered our services to help the family. With that, but they have to make the ultimate decisions. I've already arranged for some housing for my time to go to Cooperstown, bring in my family, bring in my grandkids. I want it to be a special weekend for them. It's important to get, if you're going to go to Cooperstown, get lodging now, especially when I said half of Japan's going to get reservations for their Suzuki getting inducted in July of 2025.
That is very good insight. And I don't know if warning might be too strong of a word there, but definitely a word for the wise, so to speak, when it comes to planning. I know when I went 10 years ago for the induction of Frank Thomas, It was an absolutely insane scene, just the sheer volume of people there. And I remember having to stay in Albany, that weekend there, because everything in Cooperstown was just completely booked up. And I mean, that was a really special weekend there for me in a lot of ways, having Frank Thomas and then Greg Maddux and Tom Glavine, two guys that, the Braves were my team in the National League growing up back when they used to be on TBS. So those were three players that I really identified with from the course of my childhood and my adolescence. So to be able to be there for their induction was something really special. And I think that's probably going to be a similar thing for you, because you talked about Dick Allen being your favorite player when you were growing up in the Chicago suburbs as a kid, and having the poster on your wall of the Sports Illustrated.
Still on the wall.
So yeah, I mean, that's got to be a very special thing and something to really look forward to, because again, it's going to kind of take you back a little bit to a younger time in your life, probably when things might have been a little simpler than they are as you get older and become a professional, and you having your own medical practice and everything. So the maybe youthful exuberance that you might be feeling that weekend, I'm sure will be pretty special.
Well, I feel youthful still, so thank God. It still feels as ambitious as ever. But thank you for the sentiments. I mean, Albany's 90 miles away from Cooperstown. A lot of people will have to stay there, unfortunately. It's a quaint little village up there in Upper New York, and it's a special time. So I have no idea what the White Sox are going to do to celebrate Dick's Hall of Fame induction. I at least hope they will have at least a Dick Allen night, some recognition. Hopefully they'll throw a party for Dick and his family like they did for Frank Thomas and Tony La Russa in 2014, which I was fortunate to be part of. But I think it's going to be nice for a lot of White Sox fans, again, after a very painful 2024 campaign, to have look back for something to celebrate. I mean, I don't see too many White Sox players as future Hall of Famers. I think off camera, you and I have had a discussion about possibly Chris Sale as being a future Hall of Famer. But right now, it's pretty bleak for those type of level of players for the White Sox.
Yeah. The only other one that I can think of, and this is one that has a very personal connection to me, would be Mark Burley. And he's a guy that is a fringe guy, depending on how you look at it. And I think his candidacy, he hasn't garnered a tremendous amount of support to this point. But I think given the evolution of the game and the way starting pitchers are utilized, I think it's forcing some people to kind of look back on his career, the consistency and the durability that he provided to it, and being a guy that threw a no-hitter, threw a perfect game, got a save in the World Series, and all the other accolades, 200 plus wins, which is something that, we may never see another, starting pitchers get to 200 wins anymore at this point. And so for me, that's a guy that I would have personal vested interest in. And, our discussions have kind of got me thinking like, hey, do I maybe need to be a little bit more out in the forefront of trying to spread the word about Mark Burley and trying to get my favorite player in the Hall of Fame.
Well, yeah, you see my example. It does work. It takes a while to get it done, but I certainly agree with Mark Burley. I mean, I think he's a real plus on the organization. I wish he had never left the franchise and stayed with the White Sox his entire time. I got to see that fabulous play at opening day 2010. I was
there too.
I was sitting next to Bob Feller. We were celebrating his 70th anniversary of his no-hitter against the White Sox, and he couldn't believe the play that Burley made that day. So you got to get behind these players, and I think time will shine, just like Dick's stats came more apparent with time. That Burley's consistency, the 200 innings pitched, and also his performance in the 2005 postseason, speak for themselves.
When we talked last time, you mentioned about the idea, if the vote went the way that you were hoping for, and obviously it did, that we might have that we'll have a follow-up Hall of Fame edition to the book Chili Dog MVP. That, again, if you're a Sox fan and if you have not purchased that book, you need to go ahead and do so. Where are things at with kind of the Hall of Fame edition of Chili Dog MVP right now?
Well, we're working on it. I mean, it's nice when we have a book like this that's successful, that people come out of the woodwork, and we've got the John Allen family that have come out, and we've established some rapport with them, new information. Obviously, we'll have a chapter about Dallas in there. We have a few other interviews we want to update. Obviously, we'll have an update about the players who are still living on the 72 team. So it'll probably be another 50, 75 pages, but we're going to change the cover a little bit, and incorporate. It won't be too radically different, but obviously have that Hall of Fame plug on the cover.
Well, I know I am personally looking forward to that. That'll really be a nice way to kind of cap off this entire experience and all the work that you have put into this entire process for a number of years. And I'll tell our listeners once again, I still remember the very first conversation that we had when I came down to meet you in Champaign in January of 2021. And we got to talking about baseball and just some of the various historical artifacts that you have in your conference room down at your practice there. And you mentioned to me the project that you were working on, and it's really been a whirlwind ever since. So I'm certainly excited to see the Hall of Fame edition when that comes out. And I think it will really be a nice feather in the cap of this entire process and all the work you and John Owens and everybody else did to kind of get to this point.
Well, thank you very much, Steve. I remember our conversation very well. Obviously, we've continued to have a very close professional association that we intertwine baseball with. So that's a lot of fun. But I just think having some passions you can get away and relax from and put a cause. I mean, I feel a lot of sense of pride of the mission accomplished, getting this done. It's kind of hard to change baseball history. I'm still working on getting Buck Weaver cleared. That project's been going on for 20 years. So you just got to celebrate it. And I think that's the connection with baseball intergenerationally that it helps. It does help me in my business life, because I know that after Dallas, I came back. I had a lot of attorneys. I didn't know you wrote that book, Chili Dog, and they had seen me on ESPN or Baseball Tonight. So, I enjoyed that, getting a little bit of that juice from the project I did, that I had a little bit more in my life than just being a doctor.
Yeah. Well, it's as you know from your experience in the market sector that we operate in, getting recognition for things like that outside of the professional arena that we operate in is always very fulfilling and enjoyable to see things that you do outside of work and outside of clinic life getting recognized there. So that obviously had to be a great feeling for you as well. So Dr. Fletcher, want to thank you once again for joining us. Any final thoughts here as we wrap up our discussion here, Dick Allen in the Hall of Fame and everything that was involved in the process?
Well, I'll just tell the final thoughts was I always looked up in my bedroom wall with that famous Sports Illustrated photo, and I kept, thinking I'm going to get the guy in the Hall of Fame. So when I came back from Dallas, it was very emotional for me to look at that cover again and know that he's going to go in, finally get recognition. And it's really for Chicago. It's for White Sox fans, for the joy he brought. And Nancy Faust, Harry Carey, Milton, Carlos May, Wilbur Wood, all those cast of characters that were really special. That made a lot of Chicagoans White Sox fans for life. So that's kind of my final thoughts from a personal perspective.
Well, thank you so much for hopping on and giving us a little bit of your time here again today to talk about the entire process of being down in Dallas at the winter meetings, the lead up to the Hall of Fame vote, and the joy of the announcement of Dick Allen. There it is, right there.
Right there, number 15 inside, right there, okay? Right
there. Going to Cooperstown, baby. So, Dr. Fletcher, thank you once again. And for all of our listeners here, please be sure to go to ontapsportsnet.com for all your Chicago sports literature and podcasting needs. We'll obviously certainly have more on the Dick Allen Hall of Fame induction as we lead to Induction Sunday in late July. Dr. Fletcher, once again, thank you so much for giving us some of your time here today. Have yourself a great day.
All right. Hey, thanks, Steve. Bye-bye. Thank you again.
Take care.